Right, good afternoon, everybody. The Chief Exec has informed me it's already 1 minute past 2. It's probably 2 minutes past by now to him. Welcome, everyone, to the Hub meeting. Interests and declarations as on the sheet. If anybody has anybody, if they could please declare. Papers open. Right, apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon, members. We've got an apology for absence this afternoon from Councillor Leach. Thank you.
Declarations of interest we've just covered. Item 3, items requiring urgent attention.
None that I'm aware of, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will do confirmation of minutes from the meeting held on the 21st of November, and I think they've been through full council, haven't they? But they go through on the 19th. So if I just say page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Everybody happy with those? Thank you. I need a proposer and seconder. Oh, right, we'll do it formally. Thank you, Councillor Mott and Councillor Renders. Do we have any public questions? I think I know everyone in the room.
We've received none. Thank you, Leader.
Right. Item 6 is the Hub Committee Forward Plan. Does anybody have anything that's... there's a few issues for today, mainly on page 2. In fact, they're all on page 2. And quite a few for today on item 3. The joint local plan review will be starting to come up, and that's for March that we start to look at that formally. Also for March, we've got the revenue budget monitoring, capital programme, conservation area appraisal for Tavistock, discretionary payments. The climate adaptation strategy will also be brought to Hub on the 5th of March, and the Oakhampton neighbourhood plan and the UK shared prosperity is a date to be confirmed, and the Oakie one is. So is everybody happy with that? And I know it's been through ONS, so is everybody at the Hub happy with that? Okay, thank you very much. Right, now we're going to move to the exciting part. The council plan. I'm really delighted that this plan is here. What I'm happier about is that every member of this council has had the opportunity to be involved with it directly, indirectly, and it's had a lot of attention given to it, I think is the best way to describe it. And I hope that you all feel that you've been able to answer your questions and, have answers to your questions about this. So today we are looking at considering the plan for 24-28 as set out in Appendix A and Year 1 2024-25 delivery plan in Appendix B. Recommend to Council to adopt the plan and 24-25 delivery plan at its meeting on the 20th of February, and recommend to Council to approve the funding for the 24-25 delivery plan as set out in section 5.4 of this report. The delivery plan is an essential part of this, which also goes into our budget. So we have a lot of exciting things within the council plan, but also within the budget that will help fund this plan. So if I hand over to Andy and Neil now, Mr. Hawke and Mr. Bates, if you've got anything you'd like to add.
I'd like to add something briefly, if I may, Leader. Thank you very much for your comments. So this is the most important plan that the council will be deciding on this year. It frames the entire activity of this council for the next medium term. and most importantly, sets out all of the key actions that we will deliver on behalf of our communities for the next 12 months. I'd absolutely endorse your comments about the inclusion and involvement of all members in this process. I believe it is a plan which reflects the needs and expectations of our communities, but I'd also like to use the opportunity, if I might, to say a big thank you to Mr. Hawke for his excellent work on this on behalf of the council, and in the way in which he has managed to work with all the members to bring it together. So thank you very much, Leader.
I was going to do it at the end of the bit, but yes, a big thank you to Mr. Hawke, who has worked tirelessly on this. He's hidden in many cupboards and everything else to get this done, because not only has he been doing ours, he's been doing South Hams as well. So it's been a lot of work to get done. So thank you very much for that, Mr. Hawke, on behalf of all the members. Right, any questions, please? Councillor Jury.
Sorry, Chair, I'll leave what I was going to say until debate, if I may.
Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Cheadle.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I echo your thoughts. Good plan. But I've got one question. In the accompanying document, which is the delivery plan, what are we to make of the lines that have absolutely no information in them at all?
The lines that are left blank are because the money is already in the budget, and it's part of the department's budget that they come under. I think that's the simplest way, isn't it?
I wasn't referring actually to the resources bit. I was looking at the specific deliverables. Many of those are absolutely blank as well.
Thank you, Councillor Cheadle. Yes, you're right. Some of them are, they don't have specific deliverables in, primarily because the overarching action probably sets out all that we've got available to us at this point in time. So we will develop those as we move forward. Sorry, I'm trying to speak into the microphone whilst looking at you. So I think, for example, one of the ones, so PC 2.6, lobby partners for better service provision in West Devon, for example, Devon County Council for potholes and youth provision, is an overarching action. At this point in time, we haven't got specific deliverables because we felt that probably set out enough for what we will be doing over the next 12 months.
Okay. There's nothing in the specific deliverables, so I'm always a bit nervous.
Yeah, I think, you know, Councillor.
So I think the other thing to say in answer to the question, so I think it's a reasonable point to be making, Councillor Cheadle, but this is the council's top level plan, and of course it's underpinned by many other plans. We have the housing strategy is on this agenda, which provides much of the detail around housing. This plan will, of course, cascade into all of the service plans that each head of department will be developing. So there will be much more detail to follow. But the challenge, as always with these things, is spending enough time to make sure that we've encapsulated the right issues and challenges and actions at a strategic level, on the one hand, but also to be able to get on with it. And by agreeing the plan, hopefully through debate today in Hub and then through Council, that sets the direction. I agree with you, there will be more detail to follow, and that detail will follow in those service plans. And of course, the reporting back on it will be frequent to the executive, and it will be an evolving plan and a developing plan as we go. So hopefully that's helped, Leader.
Mr. Hawke, did you wish to finish what you were saying?
No, I was just going to talk about the reporting and the updating on the plan through the reporting, because we'll also be bringing forward deep dives on particular themes through the overview and scrutiny process, which is where we can again set out more detail as it emerges.
And I know that the Chief Exec last week, and I think the Deputy Chief Exec, were both giving staff briefings, and it was on this local plan as to how they embed. So as the tiers work downwards, it goes right down to the grassroots of staff as to what this plan is and to what is expected of it. So it will get the gaps filled, but just some of it is not like this week. Councillor Jury.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and phrase this as a question, but perhaps as a bit of an answer as well to Councillor Cheadle's comment. So would it be fair to say that we also ought to consider this plan to be a work in progress and a living and breathing document that we're developing even as we speak, rather than it just being a set of things that we've agreed now and we're not going to change and develop those at all? If I give you an example, I mean, within the economy area, so item 3 under there, enable the development of local food and drink distribution projects. I think we had a very interesting meeting this morning when we were talking to some of our delivery partners in this area, and it's really a question of working out how we actually do that and what the deliverables will therefore be. I think this gives us license to develop that over the year and probably cement some deliverables in there that will come forward in subsequent years. So hopefully that was enough of a question.
So absolutely, Councillor Jury. The key for me is to have clarity of focus and purpose for the organisation. On the one hand, I believe the plan provides that. Certainty that we have the resources to deliver the actions within it, which is the point of the detailed delivery plan. So where there's a need for additional resource, it's clearly set out. Where we're relying on existing funding, be that grant funding, UK SPF, etc., that's clear as well. But it absolutely must be a dynamic plan which reflects the changing requirements of the council. So, and partly that will be the detail within the individual lines within the delivery plan, but also, of course, if some unexpected event were to befall us, then I would want to make sure that the plan responded to that. So it's absolutely a dynamic plan, but it gives us the certainty to be setting off. What we can't do is to keep reviewing and simply not doing anything. I'm determined that we get on with the doing, and of course we can adjust our course as we go according to what our communities need from us and what the greatest priority is at that time.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any further questions? So for the ease of going forward, if I move the recommendations 1 to 3, do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Renders. Now open to debate, please. Councillor Daniel, please.
I just want to say thank you to all the officers, especially Mr. Hawke, who've worked on this plan. I think it's something that we can really be proud of, and it really shows that we do have a vision and a strategy and a care for our people and our environment. Thank you.
Councillor Jury.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I'd like to echo everyone's thoughts on this, and I really welcome this plan and the granularity of it and the proposals that we have within it and the scope that gives us for continuing, I think, the work that we've carried on over recent years. Especially, though, I think it's really pleasing to be able to look at this plan and see the money that is set aside to be spent on these various projects. We spend a lot of time in the council dealing with our revenue budget. I think actually our capital spend is potentially even more important than that, and it's really pleasing to see that we've managed to work with colleagues in county and DLUC to secure funding that has given us both some additional revenue spend on different projects, but also to see some of the capital expenditure that is in there. I've never seen anything like it since I've been a councillor in West Devon, and it's really pleasing to note, I mean, even just the investment in the new station that is proposed for Oakhampton is a monumental step forward for the economy of this area, and I really welcome all that being cemented in and highlighted in this plan. So well done, everybody.
Councillor Moody.
Thank you, Leader. Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you. No, I totally support the former statements made by my colleagues. We would like to thank all the members who have been involved in the advisory groups. I think without them, and I'd like to encourage all members to keep in contact with their lead members so that as we are evolving this plan, that we can do it with everyone's input. And I think that's really important. Thank you.
Mr. Hawke, do you have a strategy as to how you're going to be doing that with these advisory groups so they're not just withering on the vine?
We're developing a strategy, Leader. I mean, I think it's fair to say the initial focus, is to start delivering. And we'll then bring back update reports through those advisory group meetings over the, I think we set out we'd have about 3 advisory group meetings a year. We've had 2 already, and it has been really helpful. Councillor Moody to shape, invaluable in shaping the priorities, as has, to be fair, the public consultation, and we should thank members of the public and town and parish councils who took the time to respond to the consultation. Not a massive amount of response, but some really helpful comments provided back through that consultation process, which really helped shape the delivery plan. So, again, I thank you to our residents. But yeah, I think it's fair to say advisory groups are really, really helpful to shape our plans, but we'll come back to you in terms of the detailed plan.
Okay, so for members, particularly the hub members who lead on these advisory groups, if we look at setting a meeting for early autumn, because some of the plans actually already have a green tick that they've already been done, because when you go into the activity report, you will see that some ideas and activities have already been completed. Some of them may have an empty gap at the moment, but they're finished. So I think it would be helpful to have a meeting about then, and then to look at ones that maybe aren't coming online as quickly as we hoped. We can look at pushing for those. Councillor Moody, please.
Thank you, Leader. Also, I'd like to involve in that is that the lead members who cross over, it's good to have meetings, semi-regular meetings, so that we can keep in touch with each other as well.
Does anybody else have any other comments? The back row, anyone? Councillor West.
I would reflect everything that everybody's said. There's been a lot of hard work gone into this. What I'm really pleased about the fact is it's not set in stone, because that is so important. We have to be able to react with the environment out there and the changes that come along. My only observation from my point of view, and it does very much relate to my ward, is the active travel about walking and cycling. A lot of my members are geriatrics, so the option to get on a bike or walk isn't there. And I did notice in the consultation there was talk about how we can perhaps develop better bus services, that sort of thing. So that is something that I feel that, yes, we've got to get the walking and cycling, but it is something that we may need to consider in the future. But this is a great start to where we need to be, and it will bring lots of opportunities for everybody within West Devon. So thank you to everybody for that.
Sorry, just me. Right, okay. Sorry. Everybody had their say. That's wonderful. Right, may we take a vote, please? All those in favour of the plan, as in recommendations 1, 2 and 3.
That's 8 and unanimous. Thank you.
Unanimous, thank you. Right. We now move on to the draft revenue and capital budget proposals for 24-25. This is where we will get to see some of the funding that we're hoping for the budget. One of the ones that immediately delighted a few of us is, for example, we're managing to fund some money into grants for the arts. Now that disappeared about 10 odd years ago, and to see it come back is really, really good. You know, West Devon are showing within our budget that we can look forward. we can give hope to our residents that we can afford to fund a few more things than we did. And as we all know, a little bit of money from us can help with, you know, seed growth and applying for other bids where match funding and all the rest of it. So we know it can really help. The recommendations go down from number 1 through to number 8. I won't read them all out, and I will leave Mrs. Buckle and Councillor Edmonds, if he would like to chip in, the opportunity to go through the budget with everybody.
Thank you very much, Leader. So yes, our budget process started in September, where we had the medium-term financial strategy looking over the next 3 financial years until 26-27. And on page 77 of the agenda there in 1.7, we've set out our predicted budget gaps for next year. Obviously, the proposals today would give us a balanced budget for next year. For 25-26, the budget gap is predicted to be just over 400,000, and then looking forward into 26-27, it would be about 874,000. Now, with regards to next year, the finance settlement which came out just before Christmas was very much what we would call a rollover settlement, so no big changes really in the government funding. And if you look back sort of to 2009, 2010, the Borough Council used to receive about £3 million in core government funding, what we used to call revenue support grant. That has reduced over the years, and next year, 24-25, we will get just over 94,000. And one of the ways we've been able to manage with those reductions in core government funding has been our shared partnership with South Hams District Council, and that's actually saving West Devon over 2.2 million every year. It's important to note that there will be local government finance reforms on the horizon, things like the Fair Funding Review, things like the business rate baseline reset. We think those reforms now won't come in until 26-27. So part of that is what's increasing the budget gap there in 3 years' time. But whether those reforms will even come in then is pretty much unknown at the moment. So in terms of the assumptions that are in this budget report, those are set out on page 77 of the report. And in 1.9, we've got a table there showing how we've gone from the position that was last reported to the Hub Committee in November of 142,000 budget gap down to today's proposals, where we're setting out a balanced budget position for members' consideration. In section 2 there, it just shows the diagram of all of the things that feeds into our medium-term financial strategy. So obviously some income streams like council tax and business rates, as well as things like government grants such as Rural Services Delivery Grant and New Homes Bonus. In terms of the finance settlement, we're not expecting that, Leader, until early February. So when these budget proposals go to council on the 20th of February, they will contain whatever is announced in the final finance settlement. We're not expecting that to be very different to the current figures. There was a small amount of increase to the Rural Services Delivery Grant announced in the final settlement, so an extra 15 million nationally is going in there. And also the funding guarantee has been increased by government from 3% increase in core spending power to 4%. Now, we don't know the methodology that's going to be applied in terms of being able to work out what financial impact that has on us, but I think it would be very small and quite minimal, and probably in the tens of thousands is my estimate. But when that final finance settlement comes out in early February, we will include details of that in the council report for the 20th. And in section 3, we set out their council tax. So the referendum limit for district councils has been confirmed at the higher of 2.99% or £5, and 2.99% increase would actually be £7.59 on a Band E property. so that is under 15 pence per week. And the council's share of the council tax, that will be formally set at council on the 20th of February. And a 1% increase in council tax generates 55,000 for the Borough Council, and the 2.99 increase would generate extra council tax income of £165,000. And obviously that not only generates that for the next financial year, it's for every financial year thereafter, and that is then built into the base. With regards to business rates, as I said, we're not expecting that business rate baseline reset for another couple of years, which is good news for us. And also remaining in the Devon business rate pool, we're expecting a pooling gain from that of around 200,000. So we've been part of that Devon business rate pool since it began in 2013, and we've benefited from the financial pooling gains that pool has made. In terms of new homes bonus on page 87, our provisional allocation is that we will receive about 449,000, and the proposal is that we would use 309,000 of that to fund our revenue-based budget, and 140,000 for capital projects. In 3.29 of the report onwards, we set out the funding for the council plan and the delivery plan. So of the 387,500, 337,500 of that is revenue expenditure. So you can see that has been built into the cost pressures, and 50,000 of it is capital expenditure. And then in terms of what's being funded from core budgets, there's 585,000 of revenue expenditure. Quite a large part of that is from the UK shared prosperity funding. And then there is 16.3 million of capital expenditure. And again, a large part of that is the funding for the Oakhampton Railway government grant, as well as things like Homes Upgrade Grant and Disabled Facilities grants. Moving forward, in terms of earmarked reserves and unearmarked reserves, at the end of March, our earmarked reserves were 8.9 million, unearmarked reserves are just over 1.5. So I think our reserves are at a prudent level. And actually, when we take the report to council in February, I have to complete a risk assessment of reserves. So that's a separate appendices that you will see attached to the budget report in February. And we also set out there the capital programme proposals. In terms of the timetables, so 20th of February will be when council will approve the final budget, and then on the 22nd of February, that's when we would hold the council tax setting panel to agree the council tax resolutions for 24-25. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Buckle. Councillor Edmonds, would you like to add anything?
Really, maybe I can draw members' attention to 9.4 and 9.5 of the report as well, which comments on the auditor's findings, and I think those speak for themselves. And it says under the category of financial sustainability, the report stated that West Devon Borough Council continues to perform well with regard to financial sustainability, with a record of stable financial and budgetary management. Despite the challenging environment in which it continued to operate during 21-22, 22-23, the council has maintained a good financial position and achieved a balanced budget. So I think that, as I said, speaks for itself, and I'd just like to thank Mrs. Spelker and all the team who consistently produce a good financial position for the council.
Thank you. I would just like to extend my thanks to Mrs. Buckle and Mrs. Henstock and the team and their honorary member of their team, Councillor Edmonds, because I feel you are an honorary member. I always feel a bit of a fraud, you know, that I'm presenting the budget, but actually Councillor Edmonds has done a lot of the work with the team. Questions then, please, members. Councillor Cheadle.
Thank you. Not so much a question about the West Devon position, but I was looking at Appendix D, which is the Town and Parish Council precepts. And there's a significant variation between the different councils, and of course each parish council is different and facing different problems. But I think the spread of differences is bigger than I'm used to seeing. And I just wonder if we do any form, I know we don't instruct parish councils what to set as their precept, but do we do some sort of due diligence on the large variations?
Thank you, Leader. In terms of our due diligence, in terms of we check the accuracy of the Band D calculation. So we do send out a precept calculator to towns and parishes just before Christmas, advising them of their tax base. So that's how many Band D equivalent chargeable properties there are charged to council tax. So we would double check that calculation, but in terms of our involvement as a borough council in the setting of those precepts, no, we would not get involved in that. That's a decision for the town and parish council, and that's their democratic decision. We do complete a government return around middle of March that would advise government of what all the parishes are, what the precepts are. So we have to fill that out. So the government will have that information and they will collate that position nationally. And when making a decision about whether or not a council tax referendum limit would apply to towns and parishes, the government would look at the trends of parish precepts in the Band D council tax set. So they would take that into consideration. And I think what they say is obviously they expect towns and parishes to show financial restraint and show prudence in their budgeting. But that's as far as our responsibilities go as such.
Well, I mean, it's not a table that everyone's eye will be drawn to, but there are some parish precept increases of 30%.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cheadle. Does anybody else have any questions? Any online? No. No. Well, this is something else that we've all had a lot of opportunity to be involved with and everything else, this document. So I will move the recommendations. Mrs. Buckle, is it fine to move them all en bloc, or do you need any of them separately?
It would be fine to move them on block, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. So if I can move the buckle, if I could, sorry, Lisa, if I could move the recommendations number 1 to number 8, please, 75 and 76 of your agenda. Do I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second, yeah.
Thank you. Right, we're open to debate now, so if anybody would like to make any comments on the budget, please. Councillor Rendell.
Just a quick note, I was listening to the news earlier on this week, and I think there's umpteen different councils around the country that are really struggling to come forward with a balanced budget. Thankfully, we're not within that, so that was my only comment. It was a sigh of relief when I saw that we'd got a balanced one, which is brilliant. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any comments to make? Councillor Jury, please.
Thank you, Leader. Like everybody else, continue to be impressed with the amount of work and detail that goes into this budget. I'd like to make a couple of points. One is that those members who are slightly longer in the tooth, like me, and in particular those from the 2015 intake, will probably remember our introduction to the council, which was, here you go, here's the budget, we're looking at about £1 million deficit. We need to do something about it. And I'd also like to record appreciation for those members of the council who over the last 8 or 9 years have worked, and a number of people have, well, every member I think has contributed to this in terms of giving political direction and cover and support for the officers in making sure that our budget is fit for purpose. But not only cutting the budget in order to make sure we presented a balanced budget, but having the foresight to make sure that we had a budget that meant we were actually doing stuff within our communities. And I think we've managed to build on that and improve that over the years, and I think long may that continue. We've got to realise why we are here, and the reason we are here is to serve our communities. That kind of brings me in essence onto the second point I was going to make. And if you read the comments in the feedback from the consultation, they're quite interesting. There are some really interesting points there that I hope we will pull out and include in our planning for future years. There are also a lot of points that show that people just don't understand what we do at all, and some really quite difficult comments about, I mean, for example, why are you bothering about staff welfare? This should be the last thing you're worried about, and things like that. I think what we ought to be aiming to do, and I know we do this, but perhaps we can redouble our efforts, is getting communication out there about our successes and making sure that those are recognised within the community, because we do have a good council, we do have a thriving council, and we are seeking to do things for the community. And I think part of the process is getting the budget right. The other part is communicating what we do, and that should continue.
Thank you for that. Councillor Edmonds, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's great that we've, the team again are proposing a balanced budget. That's really the start of, it's a snapshot, that's the start of the journey for this particular year and budget, but it's that daily continuous monitoring and managing of the budget with Mrs. Henstock and her team in particular that really make it happen. That's an absolute key part of that, and included in that, the Chair will be very familiar with this, is the Treasury income, the Treasury management, which is absolutely vital to us, and we'll realise about £1.1 million, and that is through close daily effective actions and monitoring of that. So it's an awful lot of hard work that goes into this, day after day after day.
Treasury management, as I know, it's the first thing you do when you get to your desk in the morning, because you have to look at the money markets and all the rest of it. I mean, it is a thrill. I love doing it, which is why, as Mrs. Henstock and Mrs. Buckle know, I get very excited on the subject because it is exciting. And our team, particularly, our Treasury management team, they invest every penny we get. So if somebody's going to give us £1 million, we're going to use it for a little while to get some interest while we're not having to spend it all in 1 week. And as it comes out during the year, and the same goes for the railway. We're going to be in a very good position to invest our money and make use of it to help us run a balanced budget of a council. So as much as homeowners would like the mortgage rates to drop, which would help them, we'd lose out. So we'd like a little bit of equilibrium. Does anybody else have any comments to make? No? Well, I will take that to the vote. Moving recommendations 1 to 8. All those in favour, please.
That is unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, everybody. And once again, thank you to the finance team and their honorary member. Item 9 is finally not me. It's Councillor Renders.
Sure.
Yeah.
She's here, look.
Here she comes.
Well, while she settles down, I can take this moment to say we have the amazing Mrs. Blake in the room with us here, who will be here to answer all the awkward questions. And I'd just like to pass on my gratitude to her and her team and the amount of work they put into this and all the things that went into the council plan as well, and her undying support. So anyway, enough of that rubbish. Members, I am pleased to present this report recommending an agreement of the 24-25 Housing Strategy Action Plan and noting the progress to date against the objectives. The review has been slightly delayed and relates to progress in 22-23. A further report for 23-24 will be presented to members in the spring. Some of the key achievements from 22-23 can be found in the review document and demonstrate the challenges facing our residents. 396 household support fund payments were made to residents struggling with essential items. 55% of the discretionary housing payment budget was used to support tenants with their rent. On the positive 82 affordable homes on the positive rather, 82 affordable homes were built in this time, and 3 properties were released by tenants taking advantage of our downsizing scheme. The new action plan sets out our continued ambition around putting housing top of our priorities, making best use of our existing housing, supporting health and well-being of our people and area, and promoting balance and sustainable, put my teeth back in, communities. We anticipate delivery of 3 new properties for temporary accommodation at Plymouth Road, a further family unit at 3 Spring Hill, launch a scheme to help our communities bring forward affordable housing in their locality, work with other public bodies to repurpose redundant buildings, and include bringing forward affordable housing schemes on our own land in Oakhampton and Princetown, all while improving our evidence base around housing. Furthermore, there are specific actions around care leavers, supporting solutions for domestic abuse victims, older people and those fleeing conflict in Afghanistan and Ukraine. Members also have a key part to play in the delivery of this strategy, with a number of actions around lobbying activity to push forward a legislative change. This is around second homes and planning changes, so we will work closely with officers to ensure successful delivery of our objectives. I know it was mentioned earlier on, but I would also like to extend my thanks to the members of my Housing Advisory Group who have contributed to the refreshed actions and for creating a synergy between the West Devon Council Plan and this detailed strategy, which set out all our activities under housing and homelessness. So thank you again, Mrs. Blake. Hopefully you've had a good chance to read it.
Right, while we're on the thanks, I would like to extend particular thanks to Sophie Cobbledick, and I'm sure the Chief Exec will echo my thanks for the work that she's doing as part of Devon County Council's corporate parenting. Sophie has just been outstanding, hasn't she? So, Mrs. Blake, could you convey those thanks to her? She really deserves them. And for one of the papers that she put together in about a day or so, that was really vital. Thank you to Sophie. Does anyone have any questions on the report, please? Councillor Cheadle.
Thank you, Leader. At the recent Joint Local Plan Board, which is where Plymouth, South Hams and West Devon meet to talk about the Joint Local Plan, there's a statement in the 5-year review that says West Devon and South Hams are bringing forward a number of initiatives to increase the amount of affordable homes in their areas, words to that effect. In this plan, it talks about continuing the conversation with continuing developing this, that and the other. I mean, are there actually anywhere or where is the innovative thinking set out about how we are going to increase the number of affordable homes in West Devon? It doesn't jump out at you from this document.
Mr. Brooke, are you able to come forward and answer that question, please?
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Cheadle. You're right. So it's a question of just everything running a little bit in parallel. So we're aware of members' aspirations to work in that space, to see how we can work to bring forward housing in the right place for the right type of tenure for the right people, and we have a plan. So cunning, you could no, and we intend to bring it back to this committee for scrutiny and hopefully support. And it'll be coming, is it next meeting or the one after? Forgive me, I can't remember. I think it'll be the meeting after that. I'm looking at Izzy because we've got a few things to get through. So informally we can coalesce around it between now and then the hub can then chew it over in April.
Thank you. Mrs. Blake, would you like to add anything to that? Any other questions? Councillor Daniel, please.
Thank you. I had a question about disabled people. We provide them, hopefully with home and a DFG, to be able them to live independently, but with the crisis in home care, can we or do we work with Devon County Council to try and enable people to stay in the homes that we've provided?
Yes, there's a range of activity that we're looking at around making sure that they've got good access to disabled facility grants. We're also looking at other access to the Better Care Fund for people that don't qualify, and some of those will emerge over the year. I think as well it's a balance about making best use of the stock that you've got, and making sure that people can live in their home to their best of their ability. So some of the things that we've worked at with downsizing has helped enable people to remain but maybe in a property that's better suited to their needs. Under the Devon Home Choice policy, we do give specific priority to somebody. It's not based on their disability, it's based on how the housing is affecting their disability, so that they're able to move to alternative accommodation to better suit them. We are looking at ways that we can work with, to challenge with the crisis in care is a real challenge. I think Devon County have indicated that there are 2,000 vacancies across the county, and where that is most acute is in rural areas. So we need to look at ways that we can ensure, and that we can do with our evidence. So some of the work that we're doing around parish profiles, being able to show people that what their need is, so that we can influence development, that it's the right type of development aimed at the right people.
There's nothing we can do about the care crisis, but if we can put people in a home that makes them more or enables them to be more independent, they may not be so dependent on care that isn't there.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Really good question, Councillor Daniel. As we know, so much care is needed and there's not enough carers out there. And there's no inducements, I want to say, and things to know that you could have a good career in care from Devon County, and hence why there are so many vacancies. Councillor Mott, please.
Thank you. I know our team are really helpful for anybody that's experiencing homelessness or the threat of that, and I appreciate that there's going to be no easy answer to this, but I'm very conscious that we still have people that are sofa surfing, sleeping in vehicles, for example, because they either fall through the cracks somewhere along the line. And I'm very conscious that very often people will respond, particularly on social media, where they say the council is rubbish because they can't help me, or they've done nothing, when I know that our team does work very hard to help with situations like that. But is there any way that we can kind of help close those cracks and help the people that are still sofa surfing or sleeping in vehicles to be able to either find accommodation or temporary accommodation even, or I'm just conscious that we have still got those cracks there, or is it just a case of we just haven't got enough temporary accommodation or even accommodation that we can offer full stop?
No, you're absolutely right, Councillor Mott. 50% of the housing register is a one-bed need, and actually it's really difficult to developers are very reluctant to build one-bed accommodation, so we're not getting the supply that we would help. There has been a bit of good news in that the local housing allowances will increase from the 1st of April, and this is the difference is around £20 to £25, depending on where you are in the borough, increase in local housing allowance, which is the amount of housing benefit you would get. And I think that will make a difference. That will mean that some of the private rented sector, what's left of the private rented sector, will be affordable for people. It's been a long time coming, and it's a real welcome change. We're also one of the only boroughs left in Devon that continues to operate no second night out, which is where people are at risk of rough sleeping. They will get an offer of accommodation, and they will get some intensive support to work with them to, it's not an open-ended offer, but we will accommodate people who we know to be rough sleeping or at risk of rough sleeping, under the power, not the duty, and work with them to find an alternative solution to going back to the streets or sofa surfing.
An excellent point made, Councillor Mott. It tends to be young teenage men, and as we know, the highest suicide rate is young men. So, you know, it really is something that we should be looking at to see if we can do more. I know of a young man who's been sofa surfing in a camper van inside a work unit. You know, he was 17. So, you know, it's very, very difficult because they'll tend to walk out more. And I think parents sometimes let them go because they're a boy, stroke man, whereas a girl, I think people and parents tend to be a little bit more protective over. And it's very, very sad. And, you know, I'm sure all 31 members would really want us to work hard, and we do work very hard on it. But as Councillor Mott quite rightly points out, there are so many that fall through cracks. You know, it's easy to have a row with your parents at home and storm out the door. And sometimes saying sorry on either side, whichever it is not easy and doesn't always happen. And then these young people are just stranded. And as Councillor Mott rightly points out, they fall through the cracks. Chief Exec, did you want to say something?
I did, but I'm not sure whether I should really, Leader. So I think the housing market is fundamentally broken. That is the starting point, and everything we do, and I'm immensely proud of Mrs. Blake and her team. I think they do a phenomenal job, but we are just papering over the cracks of a fundamentally broken system, and we always have to bear that in mind. Everything we do is in that context. So unless that shifts and unless that changes, we're only ever going to be able to work around the margins. And what we do around the margins, I'm incredibly proud of. Our track record in West Devon is exemplary compared to the challenges that some colleagues have across Devon. The pressure on temporary accommodation is enormous. Izzy and her team are doing a great job. So, Councillor Mott, I completely support your ambition. I believe we are doing really good work in this space. Would we want to do more? Yes, of course we would, but it is against that sort of national picture of a system which simply isn't working, I'm afraid.
Thank you, everyone. Sounds like we've come down on real downer. Councillor West, please say something positive.
Well, I hope, well, would it be seen as positive? Hopefully not controversial. Have we got mileage? I've got two children myself. One is in single bedroom accommodation because of his disability. I've currently got my daughter living 2 rooms in our house, and to say it gets fraught at times is beyond belief. I'm just wondering what opportunities. I note the comment, the fact, and I appreciate this, that developers aren't really happy to do 1-bedroom places. I'm just wondering if there's opportunities for us to pick up houses and, like we've done with 20 Plymouth Road, actually convert houses into 2-bedroom, that sort of conversions, and use some of our budget to be able to do that for some housing, just as a way forward for that, if we're not going to get them on stream from the developers.
Yes, there absolutely is, and we're working with, as Councillor Renders said in his introduction, we are working with our public sector partners to try and look at rationalising what assets they have and looking to bring that into use for more appropriate housing. So there's opportunities there, and we'll be at the table for those for sure.
Councillor Viney, is it a question? Because we're still in questions.
Yeah, it's a quick question. Well, not. I just wondered, is there a possibility that we could join the dots a little bit between the housing crisis and the fantastic presentations that we had this morning. You know, if we think of the skills gaps that we're getting and the one-bed demands, is there scope to think slightly differently about what we are providing in terms of housing? I just wanted to float that. Thanks. Sorry, I can't get my camera to work.
Thank you. We've got a few. Right. Maybe, I don't know if Councillor Jury will be able to answer.
I'm not entirely sure where I can see the tie-up between what we had this morning. I think it's a very real question. And I'm struggling to think how we tie that up with what we discussed earlier on, unless there was anything else happening this morning. But
can I just come back on that?
Yeah, go on then, Councillor Viney.
Yeah, so basically, with regard to regenerative agriculture, we're talking about bringing more people onto the land, and we have a massive skills gap in that area. So that's the dots I'm joining there: rural, rural communities, rural enterprises, and rural housing.
Yeah, I understand now. I don't think there's anything within our plan at the moment dealing with that, but I take the point, and I think it's something that we probably do need to think about in a housing context, so maybe it's something for a future discussion.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we would like to consider is about how we incentivise landowners to come forward with land, and actually that might well be farmers who might want something in the deal as well. So there might be some synergy, and we can talk about that. We can use the Housing Advisory Group to unpack that some more, I think.
I think that's a good idea, yeah. Is that okay, Councillor Viney?
Yep, great, thank you for that.
Right, any more questions? Right, Councillor Renders, if you'd like to put forward your recommendation.
Hadn't I?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Jury.
Right, thank you. And really continuing the sort of theme about temporary housing that Councillor Mott started and was continued. We declared a housing emergency a while ago. We've had some really good plans, I think, and I take my hat off to the various teams who have been working on those. We've clearly not been successful with projects like Spring Hill. We've now got the difficulties that seem to be engulfing the Plymouth Road development and the extra care facility there. And just to sort of widen the debate slightly, I've had several conversations over the last few years with the Chief Exec when we were looking at the budget, and we've sort of sat there and said, well, thank goodness we're not an upper tier authority and we haven't got these kind of open-ended checkbooks like SEND and adult social care and child care and highways and all that, because that is what is ruining the budgeting process for top tier authorities. But I picked up on an article that was in the Municipal Journal this week about temporary housing and the pressure that is now putting district councils under in various parts of the country. It's been picked up by Inside Housing as well. And the point was made that the pressures of providing temporary accommodation could be the end of local government in the UK. It was as bland as that. So I know we can't deal with that now, but I just wonder whether we need to be thinking in terms of our housing strategy as to whether we've got anything that we can do that is a real response to that if we need to do it in fairly short time, that might involve borrowing money to purchase properties, and whether we should actively be thinking about that as part of our proposal and our solution. But probably it's an open-ended question. I know we probably can't answer it now, but something to think about perhaps.
So thank you, Councillor Jory. I mean, I think you're absolutely right about the challenge that all housing authorities are facing around temporary accommodation. some degree or another. Every single district in Devon is facing that challenge. Probably every single housing authority across the country is facing that challenge to some degree or another. So the question is, what are the solutions? Well, other than changing the fundamentally broken housing market, which I've already referred to, which is the responsibility of national government, our job is to pick up the pieces at the other end of that. And of course, we are trying to do that. The decision this council made around accepting a really good and well thought out scheme on the part of the government in terms of the local authority housing fund programme, where they were offering a substantial amount of grant. If we match that, we took advantage of that. As a result of that, we have additional accommodation, which is obviously purposed for got a particular focus initially, but as we know, it's available for general needs use beyond that. And we need to consider all the options that are available to us. So is that about opportunities to purchase property? Is it about repurposing property? Is it about working with other providers to provide property? We will do that because we need to deliver the housing. We also need to balance the budget, and the cost of putting people into less suitable temporary accommodation is a massive financial challenge, and it's not really the answer. So will we explore all those things? Yes, we will. Clearly the leader, as the chair of the Devon Housing Task Force, is absolutely having that conversation on a pan-Devon basis, involving all of the districts, Plymouth, Devon County and Torbay, to try and come up with solutions to those kind of things. They have commissioned the Housing Commission, which in turn is going to look at those options and opportunities. And in parallel with that, the districts are in discussion with the county about some plans and proposals around how the second homes council tax should be retained and focused for housing purposes. And meetings have taken place. Initial conversations have been had around a focus on housing or services that would improve outcomes on housing. In addition, there are other proposals that the county are bringing forward. So I think probably that's a very long answer, which says absolutely we are continuing to be focused on it. And I think this is going up the agenda for councils as a whole, and across Devon it's certainly a very live conversation. So we haven't got all the answers yet, but I'm pretty sure we have a group of people and councils committed to finding them. Thank you.
If I just add to that, I had an email this morning from a meeting that Stephen Milford, the chief exec, and I were at. I can't think if you were at it. I can't remember. Yeah. No, not that one. And his email was saying what him and I had discussed at the meeting is working with registered social providers. The example was given that Teen Housing have 2,500 houses. 1,000 of them are for over 55s only. So it's almost like they're trying to choose their tenants who are a different demographic to young people wanting to get into housing. And they were criticised a little bit for it at this meeting, saying they needed to look at it again. Some of our housing, I personally feel, and this discussion hasn't been had, but we're in discussions with Live West about appropriate things. Quite a few of ours are over 55s, and actually that is quite a low age group now. Years ago, you know, it was 70, and now it's supposed to be 5 school. So the situation of society has changed, and that needs to be looked at to bring some of these properties back into use for younger people and young families. So that has gone forward to the Devon Housing Commission. He sent it to Lord Best and Matt Dodd this morning to say this is what we learnt at the Care For Me subgroup of the Corporate Parenting Board. And we're also in meetings with Live West ourselves about them selling off properties, why, what was, you know, the reason behind it, where would they look to rebuild, how would they build in future if land came forward, would they build all socially rented if it was an exception site. So behind the scenes, there is a lot going on. But as everybody knows, behind the scenes can take a long time. And then suddenly we come to you with this great big announcement and we want everything done in a week. Whereas it's been going on in the background for about a year or so. So we know that's what happens. But Councillor Jury, as I say, you know, for points on this, it's really good points, well made. But I think we all have to take on board, and I know we all know it, is, as the Chief Exec says, the housing sector is just broken. But there are changes that we can make. Did you want to elaborate on that, Mrs. Blake?
Yes, West Devon has the lowest numbers in temporary accommodation in the county. So, you know, we can be proud of our work around keeping people out of temporary accommodation and offering longer term options than the emergency accommodation. The cost that's crucifying other local authorities, which the inside housing report was pay nightly accommodation. And just to reiterate Andy's point, and actually the point that you made as well, Councillor Jury, that longer term options that we own is probably the way to circumnavigate some of those really high costs and stop the catastrophising of that temporary accommodation budget.
Councillor Edmonds, did I see you?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, when we get to item 12, I think it is, no, probably not, a little bit later than that, the revenue budget monitoring item, we'll see there that our homelessness costs are already, you know, we're already forecasting an overspend of 250,000 in this financial year. So I guess the question would be, where do you see that demand going the following year? And that's a really difficult question. But I think we're going to struggle to repair the housing sector, but I think it really does come down to what we're all already doing in the borough, which is absolutely great. And I guess it is pushing forward at pace with the Plymouth Road project. Maybe, you know, and I noticed one of the documents, it's either the review or the action plan, makes reference to Wonacott's Road in Oakhampton. Is that an opportunity, we're not already doing so, working with a registered provider, perhaps to bring something forward you know, in the near future on that particular asset?
Yeah, I mean, as of Friday, we had 21 households in temporary accommodation, which is a lot for us. And 4 of those were families, which included 7 children, and the rest were singles, which again plays into the point that Councillor Mott raised about you know, the disproportion between single people now, often with quite complex needs, quite challenging to accommodate. The longer term, Plymouth Road, Spring Hill, the LAF properties, and you'll recall in LAF, in the second round of LAF, the 3 properties that we purchased, 2 of those can immediately be used for temporary accommodation. We're going to utilise those. We also own a further house in Oakhampton. Those will turn what could be costs into income streams. So that's where we need to focus. How do I see it going? People are getting more complex. We are seeing more people in crisis. We're seeing more single people in crisis, and that might be a reflection on some of the other challenges in other public services around mental health, drug and alcohol services. So we are seeing people that are quite challenging to house. But I think the local housing allowance might make a difference. And, you know, anything that we can then do to keep private rented landlords in the market as well, to ensure that they don't want to leave, that meets the need as well. So lots to do.
Yeah, thanks, Izzy. I guess the other point is the majority of our affordable housing comes through large developments in the borough. A bit controversial, but are they delivering, developers delivering 30% affordable housing on their developments?
We've still got some historic schemes that were pre-joint local plan, but wherever possible, we do strive for 30%. But I can do some analysis of the ones recently in the last 2 years that were granted planning and what we achieved on those, if that would be helpful.
Are there any that are currently coming forward with a request perhaps to reduce those numbers?
Redmonds, could I just bring Mr. Brooke in to help with the answers for this, please?
Thanks, Leader. And Councillor Evans. So the Joint Local Plan monitoring reports are the place to get into the skin of this. And actually, if you look across the Joint Local Plan, our delivery of affordable housing is above the target, and that continues to be the case. Now, at a joint local plan level, how we've achieved that has changed over the years. So in the early years, Plymouth were delivering significantly above what they had, target for, and more recently, the TTV area, which is how it's measured, has delivered more than it was expecting to do. Just showing how, if you work across boundaries at that scale, you can perform better as a whole. So, that's the place to get those answers from. I mean, we can all think of individual schemes which might provide individual DM challenges. I'm not saying they don't exist; they do. But actually, if you look at our performance, it's actually above target. So hopefully that's helpful.
So if I understand that correct, that's across the plan area?
Yeah, and specifically TTV, so Southampton and West Devon is actually above.
Yeah, my interest is really West Devon. And in terms of how are we performing on that metric in West Devon, and, have we got developers who are perhaps looking for a reduction in the target?
Every developer looks for a reduction in the 30% target, without exception. Actually, that's not true. I can think of perhaps one. But in West Devon, it's not the easiest metric to break down, but I'm sure Caroline's memory is better than mine, but we can say with some confidence that we are delivering above the target. So I think we're in a good place.
I think the one issue, as we're in debate, that I would like to bring in is the elephant in the room, and that is the Plymouth Road development, where our officers worked for several years on what we thought was going to be the planning application that went through in December 2021 for a care home for up to 60 residential units, which would have freed up so much family accommodation. To this day, due to the appeal that was won last summer, to this day, we still don't know what they're doing. And actually, that's very frustrating for us as a council, that we don't know which planning application is going forward, and whether it be employment land or an extra care facility. And I just think this is where suddenly, got to be so careful, suddenly we've been put in a situation that we don't know what is going on, so we cannot prepare for what we would like to hope would happen. And I think that's as near as I can go to saying anything without being done. But that is the elephant sat in this room. I can see it on so many faces that it's like, but ifs at the moment we can do nothing about. We just have to wait and see what the developer comes forward to the table with. Councillor West, and then we'll go to a vote.
Just a final comment. The definition of affordable homes is quite an interesting one in terms of what is seen as affordable, and I think for a lot of people that's not affordable.
Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Leader. I wanted to comment specifically about another aspect to affordable housing, which doesn't always get picked up at the same time, and I think it back off of Officer Brooks' comment about the joint local plan already delivering more. The types of affordable housing that we're delivering are a very specific type, and they only address a certain group of people and the need in that group of people. And one of the problems that I see, and I don't know how we address this, because I think as Councillor Mott already pointed out, it's a group of people that kind of sit above the traditional idea of what an affordable house is. And those people might have other needs, which are about locality, like where is this house located? And I'm not sure that what we're doing currently in our housing our housing situation can address that, but it's not really acceptable to tell somebody who's 73 that they have to move from Tavistock to Plymouth because that's where the affordable homes are that they can actually get into, or it doesn't feel morally acceptable to be requiring somebody to leave someplace that's been their home for 25 years because they've had a Section 21 and they aren't able to afford something in that local area. And so there's a local connection aspect to this that I think, Councillor Edmonds, when you're asking about, I want to know about West Devon, I think when we are part of this joint local plan, I guess, how do we, and are we going to be looking at it from that perspective? Because that's what I've seen locally as one of the larger issues. There might be a house, but it's in Oakhampton and you've lived in Tavistock for 25 years.
So I absolutely take the point that you're making. So for me, they are different things. There is a nationally imposed target on local government in terms of housing number delivery, and in terms of the question that Councillor Edmonds posed, we are meeting that target. Does that deliver the homes we need of the type of tenure in the right place? No, it doesn't. So we have to pass that test. In terms of the joint local plan, at least we are passing it because it is delivering in volume terms a number of houses. Whether they're truly affordable or not is a question of interpretation, but nevertheless it is delivering what it's designed to do. As has been discussed many times, the critical issue for us is to ensure that in the review of the local plan we bring more sophistication and subtlety to our policies to ensure that beyond that they deliver the houses we need in the places we need at the price. So that is the task for that revision process, and clearly within the housing strategy there are many individual activities we will do as well. So we are trying our best, but there's a lot to do.
Councillor Renders has been pontificating on an idea that he has for all members, so I'll let him say it now.
So we're going to do this at the next Housing Advisory Group and also part of the plan, but just taking from personal experience and myself in the Dartmoor ward, my suggestion is that we can all get involved in this, every 31 of us members-wise, and I'm sure within each of our wards there is a piece of land or something that we could talk to and identify on a smaller scale, which makes these things more achievable. I mean, we were lucky with the Princetown one, the fact that we actually owned part of it, but it still meant going out as me as the ward member, negotiating with the person that had to own the other half of it to get the two people to talk together and go on and go forward. So the idea was for me to put forward the suggestion that we all searched, we all came forward with the possibility. Because what that would enable us to do is then match the need to the particular area. So if we needed all one bedroom in a certain area, there's an opportunity there for us to perhaps put that forward to a housing provider. And we are talking to housing providers on this, so it's in its early stages yet, but basically that was the suggestion that I was mulling over, that if we all did it, if we all got together and we all looked further afield and looked in our own wards, we'd bring something as an individual councillor to the ward anyway. And I was thinking more of smaller, easier to do schemes than or be great big ones. We might, in the meantime, fall over bigger schemes. But it was just the idea was if we, just to replicate that out, that we've got an opportunity there of actually providing affordable homes for the people that need it the most.
But also, it's looking in smaller villages, and if farmers are willing, if they've got a son or daughter or whoever who wants to live near that bit, if they've got an exception site, it would be looked at. Housing providers have indicated, they're not committed, but indicated that they would like to support some small developments that will all be socially rented in our villages. We just need to find the sites, and that's the bit they really struggle with, because some of them would be exception sites. So we are going to have to be exceptional in how we find a solution to this issue. And as Mark says, if we could all just have a look out, Mr. Brooks' team, I'm sure, are quite happy to go and look at a piece of land to see if it is viable for that. Some of us may come up with a piece of land and they'll go, I'm really sorry, but no, that wouldn't work. But somebody may come in this door with a really good scheme that would just provide maybe 4 or 5 houses in a small village. And actually that takes a great deal off a list, but also, increases capacity elsewhere. So, sorry, Mark.
I was going to add to that, with the initial discussions we had with 1 or 2 of the housing providers were very positive, and they did say that they would commit to look at smaller schemes as opposed to being big ones, which was one of the big problems we had, especially with me having such a rural area. To try and get people to look in those areas was a nightmare, really. So we've now had a positive commitment from them as well. So I think it's a big plus. I think.
Right.
Mr. Edmonds. Councillor
Edmonds.
Not whether we're in questions or debate, but debate. Okay. I totally agree with what you've just said about smaller communities, sustainable communities, moderate development, maybe 10 properties. Very difficult to achieve, but I honestly think that is the way forward, and hopefully our local solution to a broken housing market. Easy to say, difficult to achieve, but I'm encouraged by action point on page 11 of the action plan document, which says, develop a process to evidence housing need, tailored to local parishes and communities, which include more than the single settlement. And that seems a very good place to start. And I think we've already, been doing some housing needs survey, which is a delivery plan in the current corporate plan. And so I really would like to see that move forward so that we get to that point and hopefully find some exception sites and really start to make this happen, because I think that would be the most effective way to try and come up with an answer to the housing crisis. And it would certainly be good for those communities as we kind of, make them more vibrant and so on, and support our local schools and pubs and villages, etc. So I think that is a really good way forward.
Right, so that means everybody's out looking, please. Right, if we could take a vote, please, on recommendations 1 and 2, page 109 of the agenda for the housing crisis update. All those in favour, please.
That is unanimous, Leader, for those 2 recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for the really good debate, because it is such a serious issue. Right, if we move to item 10, which is care leavers. I'm not sure Andy's on the line or here. No, so this will be the Chief Exec and myself. With all the work that we're doing on support for care leavers and corporate parenting at Devon County level, we've also decided to look in-house at what we can be doing as a council to show our commitment to the work that's being done. So we have the recommendations 1 to 3, and and the good one is the intention of the council to sign up to the care leaver covenant, which we will be very proud to do. But also for the person, Councillor Jury, who said they weren't so sure about staff welfare, I think the one to support council employees who are seeking approval to be a foster carer and following the placement of a child. I think that is really important, that we can actually encourage members of our staff who wish to go down this road, that we will be there to support them. And we will also look to supporting young care leavers into employment with apprenticeships, work experience, etc. Have I left you anything to say, Mr. Bates?
Not really, Leader, but I think this demonstrates our commitment as a council. I'm very proud of what we're doing. It's a small thing, really. When you think about the challenges that people leaving the care system face, it's our responsibility to do our bit. So free access to leisure, supporting through council tax. We are an employer. We can provide many opportunities and providing the right people, management, support to encourage our staff to also consider supporting fostering and adoption. It's all good and positive. The challenge remains, of course, around providing housing for care leavers, and that is a work in progress with the County Council. So, your comments, Leader.
Any questions, please? Can I just say, this is probably the first of quite a few things that will come forward on this topic, because we're both very keen that we are good corporate parents in West Devon, and, you know, protected characteristics and things like that we may be able to adopt. So, any questions from anyone else, please? No? If I move the recommendations 1 to 3, do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Renders. And debate them, please. Councillor Jury and then Councillor Oxborough.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to say I really support this paper. I think more than that, many councillors will be aware, I'm sure, that the chair of the Local Government Association, Sean Davis, announced that the LGA would be making a drive in this area as well. So there is much work taking place right across the country in many, many councils on this issue. He's actually asked for all the LGA boards to feed back as to how their work might impact on this issue and what they're doing. What became very apparent to me when we had some feedback at a board meeting that I attended recently was just the sheer variety of different initiatives that councils, either upper tier or district councils, are taking in this area. So I think the LGA is leading on pulling together best practice. If we're not doing it already, I urge you to report back to the LGA and take note of what is being collated and collected there as well. And hopefully this will lead to best practice nationwide that will significantly improve the lives of this group, which, as we all know, are overrepresented in areas like homelessness and the prison population. So I think it's a really good initiative and well done.
Thank you. Councillor Oxborough, please.
Yeah, I'd really like to just emphasise the importance of measures like this. I know from my own experience how people from disadvantaged backgrounds can sometimes struggle in life because they're just simply stuck in a rut and they don't ever get given that hand up and hand out. And this is really what this measure is all about, is making sure that there's an awful lot of talent there, some very, very capable, clever people who, unless they're given the opportunity, that will remain buried. And it's a measure like this, which is really what life should be all about. It's about people and helping people, and seeing people thrive and benefit and prosper in the world on an equal basis. This is one of the most important papers in the whole agenda today, in my view, and I thoroughly endorse it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Oxborough. I'd just like to add to that with what you said about the talent. One of the other subgroups, because we had an actual board meeting on Monday, and there is a talented group. And one example I can give you is a very quick one, is that somebody who's experienced care in Devon was the chief exec for day at the South Bank. And she, you know, she's a young lady who wants to go places. And yes, so she got to be the chief exec for the day. So there are some very talented young people who in the background are going through a very, very difficult time. But Devon County is now recognising that, and they're doing work, and I think it's called Bright Spots, from what I remember, of Monday's meeting. So, yeah, it is going on, and it's been worked on all the time. I would just like to say to Councillor Jury, and I don't know if his paperwork covered the same as mine, but Cornwall County Council offer driving lessons. So anybody who's experienced care. So they could want to move to Cornwall from Devon to get free driving lessons. But yes, you know, there's a lot of councils doing some amazing work that we need to start bringing it all together. And as Councillor Jury rightly says, it is Councillor Sean Davies' thing this year, although I think we'd started before him, hadn't we? Yeah. So Councillor Cheadle.
Apologies if I've missed it, but didn't I see in some conversation we were considering giving some form of council tax relief to those leaving care and entering? I don't see it in this document. Is it in here?
You've already done it.
So we don't need to reinforce that message in this document?
No, okay. It's part of our...
It's covered in paragraph 1.2.
Thank you. Councillor West.
Having been a head teacher with staff that want to do fostering and also adopt, I actively encouraged it, and working in the middle of Plymouth at Mount Wise, there were a number of families there and children in the care system coming to us and working with us. And you're right, the talent that is there is incredible. And it is one of those things that we do need to support in every stratosphere or whatever, every level of life and that. These children have that ability, and I fully applaud this. I think it's brilliant. And from the other point of view, for the staff to be able to have the opportunity to support these children as well and encourage that is a really good move forward. Thank you.
Councillor Daniel, please.
Thank you. I think I have brought this issue up before about care leavers, but when you're dealing with people with complex needs, people with disabilities, you start planning a few years before you know they're going to leave the state system. And I think that needs to happen for care leavers as well, so that they're not lost, that they don't come out into the world and feel that they haven't got a support plan in place, particularly those with mental health issues or physical disabilities or emotional difficulties. I think that really needs a lot of support, and also the role of education in that as well, that it's really important that they're included in the planning. So I don't know whether that's something that's been discussed with the local authorities, but I'd like to know
the chief exec will
Councillor Daniel, I couldn't agree more. I think the point you're making is absolutely the right one, and the work that we are doing through the Care for Me subgroup, which is focused around housing, and I'd like to say thank you to Mrs. Blake and Sophie Copperdick, who are both working on that area. So part of that is about dealing with the here and now, young people who are leaving the care system and making sure that we are able to provide appropriate accommodation. But in parallel, it's about making this system better, and that's all about planning ahead. It's about making sure there's sufficient capacity within the system, that those young people who've got complex emotional needs can be catered for properly. So planning ahead, understanding the needs of the individuals, making sure that their needs are taken account of in terms of the options and choices they have available to them is absolutely critical. And I think that the county, with the support of all the districts, is now very much focused on that. And although we are collectively starting from quite a long way back compared to some other parts of the country, the ambition is absolutely there to improve this. But your point is absolutely well made.
Ensure that you make sure that the young person is central to everything, that they're the centre, the core, and they're involved in all the discussions, because you can't make a plan without the young person being involved, because it's their life, isn't it?
That's also taken account of in the design of the way the Corporate Parenting Board works. so there is, there's representation through the boards, and the voice of the young person is absolutely central to those conversations. So absolutely, they don't always come along and listen to all the boring conversations we have. For understandable reasons, it's quite intimidating. I still find it quite intimidating going into County Hall. It's designed that way, isn't it? It's monumental architecture, but those conversations are taking place. I know that each time the National Care Leaver Advisor comes and discusses with all of us progress, he absolutely takes time to talk to people in the care system about their experience, and people leaving the care system to make sure their voice is heard. But again, I completely agree with you.
Sorry. Is everybody happy to take a vote on that now? So recommendations 1 to 3, please. All those in favour?
That is unanimous for 3. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you all very much for that. And as I say, the Chief and Exec and I will be bringing more. There's more, yes. Right, if we can move to item 11, please, on page 160. And we need Mrs. Hotchkiss, and she's in place. So, thank you. This report speaks for itself, and I will let the two financial whizzes, because I can see Councillor Edmonds is ready. Was your finger on the button? That's what we're doing now, Mark. No, you've jumped one. We're only on 11.
Sorry.
Sorry.
That's why I was
He's not keeping up. Mrs. Hotchkiss.
Thank you, Leader. Each year the Council will agree a council tax reduction scheme to support residents on a low income who qualify for assistance with paying their council tax. The current scheme was changed in 2023-24 as part of our response to the cost of living crisis, where we made the income bands more generous to reflect the impact of inflationary pressures on household budgets. The proposal for the scheme for 2024-25, which we consulted on publicly and with our major preceptors, recommends that we make 2 changes, namely the removal of the minimum income floor for self-employed claimants, and we also disregard 100% of the limited capability for work element of universal credit. There were a small number of responses to the public consultation, unfortunately only 43, but of those responses, people were broadly in support of the proposed changes. We also consulted with our major preceptors, including Devon County Council, and they have confirmed their agreement to the proposed scheme. The final council tax reduction scheme must be adopted by Council by the 11th of March, and any changes will be implemented from the 1st of April. The paper also covers council tax discounts. The report makes recommendations with regard to council tax discounts and premiums effective from the 1st of April 2024. These are essentially as is, except for the recommendation to start charging an empty homes premium after 1 year, as allowed for by the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act of 2023. At the moment, we can only do that after 2 years, and that change to the legislation is obviously driven by looking to get empty properties back into use and occupied. The Act also allows the council to charge 100% premium on second homes. We are required to give 12 months' notice with regard to this, and therefore this power won't come into effect until the 1st of April 2025. Happy to take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Mrs. Hotchkiss? Councillor Cheadle, please.
Very quick one. Can I ask if this policy is identical to that in South Hams? Thank you.
Councillor West, please.
Sorry, this is a little bit of ignorance on my part. When we talk about disregarding the 100% minimum of the limited capability for work, can you just explain that a little bit more? I've seen the comment, but I can't get it clear in my head. Thank you.
Yeah, basically, people who receive that element of for universal credit.
Kiss, can you take
Yeah,
your
sorry,
microphone with
I'll
you?
go that way.
Thank
hopefully.
you.
Yeah, okay. So people who are restricted in terms of how much they can work because of disabilities or health conditions receive an additional amount as part of their universal credit, which at the moment counts as income. So what we're proposing to do is to actually disregard that, which means more of those people who fall into that cohort will be receiving support through the council tax reduction scheme.
Thank you.
There's no other questions. I will move recommendations. So recommendation 1 notes content of the report. 2 has 3 paragraphs within the recommendation, and recommendation 3 is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Number 4, which nobody's discussed and actually is quite a biggie, is recommends to council the adoption of a second homes premium of 100% with effect from the 1st of April 2025. Now, we've discussed it before in council, so I assume everybody's very happy with that bit, and that's what we will do. Right, okay then. May I have a second, please? Thank you, Councillor Renders. Any debate, please? Councillor West.
I sort of answered my own question by reading through the paperwork. Just the amount of time before these penalties, 100, 200%, 300% come into place. 10 years seems an awful long time for somewhere to be empty or whatever on that. Are we working to what the national government is saying we have to do, or do we have flexibility around some of that?
I think I can answer that, and the other persons in the room who would be able to help is Mr. Powell. When he first arrived at West Devon, that was his job, was going around the empty properties. And believe you me, he brought in more empty properties back into use. So actually, we have a really, really low number. And I think Mr. Powell would agree that the ones that are about 10 years are ones where it's probate, where basically the families are arguing forever and a day. And sometimes you can't even find the person who owns the house. So I don't know whether you want to elaborate a bit more, Mr. Powell. You'd never be near me. I always remember your first job here.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I mean, basically what you said is right. Empty properties are empty for a number of reasons. Quite often it is down to probate and family issues. So 10 years actually is not a very long time in those circumstances. So I think that the approach that the council have taken is to liaise and work with owners of properties if we can find out who they are, and do everything we can to bring them back into use through support through our private sector housing team. But when they determine they're not going to bring them back into use, then obviously these penalties start to apply. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Mrs. Hodgkin.
Yeah, could I just jump in and say what we're proposing to do is we are going to write to all these people who are affected by this change to obviously advise them of it, but we're also going to work with our colleagues in environmental health and the housing team just to try and incentivise, people to actually think about alternatives.
That's what Mr. Powell was very successful at. Councillor Daniel, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about empty homes. Now, do they have to be habitable to qualify? And who decides that they are or are not habitable? Because we've got one in my village that's been empty for years, and I know it's a subject to family dispute, but it's actually now fallen into disrepair. So I don't know, can we still charge on that?
Yes, so if a property is in the council tax valuation list and has a valuation band attributed to it, we will charge council tax on it, even if it is in an incredibly poor state of repair, yeah.
Mr. Powell, please.
Just perhaps one thing to add to that. I mean, if you can let us know of these properties, there are a range of powers that we can use to bring them back into use, for example, under planning.
if it's having an adverse impact on the amenity of the area. Thank you.
Basically, we get as many back as possible. Right. So, may I ask you all if you've said everything you would like to say? Yep. To take a vote, please. All those in favour?
That's unanimous for the 4 recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Discretionary rate relief now, please, Mrs. Hodgkins.
Thank you, Leader. This paper is a bit of a mixed bag of policies to make sure that we are assessing council tax and business rates and dealing with its collection in a fair and consistent manner. Firstly, the discretionary rate relief policy needs updating as a consequence of the Non-Domestic Rating Act 2023, which made some changes giving councils further discretion with regard to discretionary rate relief. I think it's important to state that we will still support a number of charities and non-profit making organisations through rate relief. At the moment, we actually support 322 businesses in this regard, but it also gives a policy framework for making future decisions because it does have an impact on the council taxpayer. So it basically, kind of confirms the council's approach to this decision-making process. The second item is the extension of the business rates relief policy in relation to retail, hospitality and leisure businesses into 2024-25. As long as we adhere to the guidance provided by the government will fund this at 100%. But again, it's good policy to actually adopt a framework for making these decisions and confirming the qualifying criteria. What we will do is we know who these businesses are, so we will identify them and make sure that the rate relief is automatically awarded to them as part of the annual billing process. Thirdly, there is a updated corporate debt policy, which again seeks to provide a structure and a governance framework in terms of how we collect all income streams due to the council. It is mindful of some of the difficulties that residents and businesses are experiencing at the current time due to the cost of living crisis and possibly some wider vulnerabilities that maybe are being sort of exhibited in society at the moment. So it also incorporates some more guidance for the team and clarity also for our residents and businesses in terms of how we will approach income collection. And finally, the last policy is an amended write-off policy. This is as a consequence of an internal audit recommendation. Hub previously agreed a write-off policy around about 12 months ago, I think it was from memory, but what they've asked us to do is to also incorporate sundry debt into that policy.
Thank you, Mrs. Hodgkins. Does anyone have any questions, please? No? I could move the recommendations 1 to 4 on page 175 of the agenda. Any debate, please? Very clearly explained and everything else, Mrs. Hodgkins. All those in favour, please.
Is 8 unanimous for 4 recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Mrs. Henstock comes to join us. Right, month 7 revenue budget monitoring 23-24. Councillor Edmonds and Mrs Henstock, please.
Thank you, Chair. The end of July report was forecasting a small deficit of 37,000 at the year end, 31st of March 24. The finance team is now forecasting a surplus of 54,000 at the year end, or 0.6% of the overall budget of almost £8.6 million. Investment income is anticipated to be well ahead of the £400,000 target set in February of last year, generating an additional 700,000 to make a forecasted total of £1.1 million for the year. The latest interest rate forecast is for the current rate of 5.25% to remain at this level until the autumn of this year, with much depending on the rate of inflation. The employment market continues to be challenging, and the difficulties being experienced in recruiting to some senior positions has resulted in a forecast salary saving of £250,000 at the year end. Inflationary pressures continue to be seen in the delivery of the wage contract, and planning income is forecast to be £150,000 below target at the year end, and that's after including the recent increase in planning fees. There is some good news on the planning shortfall. The council has received a government grant of £70,000, which will partially offset the reduction in planning income for the year. The cost of providing temporary accommodation is forecast to exceed the annual budget by as much as £250,000, and that's over and above the DWP subsidy received by the council. Explanatory note J on page 222 of the report sets out the various reasons for the pressures being experienced in the housing market, both nationally and in West Devon, and the measures this council has undertaken to mitigate the impact of the housing crisis across the borough. On a positive note, the Chancellor of the Exchequer announced in the autumn statement that the local housing allowance rate will be increased for the first time in 3 years and will cover the cheapest third of local market rents from April 2024. Mrs Henstock and her team monitor budget performance monthly to identify variations and, when necessary, take prompt corrective action as detailed in Section 7 of the report. Section 10 describes the budget environment process for transferring budgeted funds from one budget code to another and the suggested approval limits. Report recommendation 2 recommends approval of these limits to council. And finally, Chair, the report recommends that the Hub Committee notes the forecast income and expenditure variations for the 23-24 financial year and the overall projected surplus of £54,000 at the year end.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edmonds. Mrs Henstock, I don't think you've got anything to add to that, have you? Does anyone have any questions to this report, please? Councillor Cheadle.
Before I ask my question, I'm tempted to ask if Mrs Henstock could pop down and turn my forecast deficit into a surplus. She seems absolutely expert at that.
I think we'd all borrow her.
I just want to dig into note C, car parking income, just to demonstrate that I understand that 2 negatives make a positive, I think. It says at the end of that paragraph that a saving of 45,000 is anticipated on a car parking third-party payment based on current income levels, generating an overall saving in respect to car parking income. Does that mean extra revenue? It's not a saving, is it? It's just more revenue.
Thank you, Leader. It is actually a saving in that we will be paying less money over to a third party. So that's what we're referring to there.
Would that be near Oakhampton somewhere? Right, got it. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions, please? No. Right. If I move the recommendations, or Mr. Councillor Edmonds move his recommendations. Go on then.
Go on. I move the recommendation, which is on page 219 of the agenda papers. Thank you.
I'm happy to second that. I will second that. Yeah. Any debate, please? No. Well done, guys. All those in favour?
That is unanimous, the two recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you both. We're getting a little frivolous as we get to the end now. Yes. Right. It's same two people again. So, Councillor Edmonds.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is capital monitoring. Details of the capital expenditure against budget are set out in Appendix A, and the report confirms that as at the end of October 2023, all capital projects are within their agreed budget. The report summarises the acquisition of 8 properties in Oakhampton and Tavistock using funding from the 2 government LAF schemes, Homes for Ukraine, Devon County Council funding and some Section 106 funds. 7 purchases have been completed with contracts exchanged on the 8th with completion hopefully in March. 5 of the properties will be allocated to Ukrainian and Afghan families, the remaining 3 used to ease wider housing pressures in West Devon. Report recommendation number 2 requests members to note the addition of a budget for the second LAF scheme as approved by this committee in September 23. Members were also asked to note in recommendation 3 that the repurposing of a council-owned building in Plymouth Road into 3 flats to support the council's housing needs has been added to the budget. Recommendation 4 recommends to council that £180,000 from the vehicles replacement reserve is used to finance replacement vehicles which are currently on order in accordance with the Waste Vehicle Forward Plan. And as a reminder, the council is the accountable body for the capital project to develop a new railway station and integrated transport hub on the eastern edge of Oakhampton. And the estimated capital expenditure for this important project is profiled in the council's capital programme over the next 3 years. Details of Section 106 deposits are set out in Appendix B, totalling £1.5 million, including the amount spent on projects to date. And finally, Chair, recommendation number 1 is that the Hub Committee resolves to endorse the contents of this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edmonds. Nothing for you, Mrs Henstock? No. Any questions, please? Councillor Cheadle.
Para 2.9, the 180k for the refuse vehicles that are on order. Are they the long-wanted green refuse vehicles, or are they ordinary ones?
Mr. Molyneux.
They're ordinary ones. Green ones are simply unaffordable at this moment in time. So, to give you an idea, a normal refuse vehicle is about £240,000. A electric one is around about double that. So at the moment, and hydrogen ones, which are just coming into the marketplace, are around about £900,000. Just to give you an idea that the technology at the moment in terms of is very expensive, and we are trying with our provider to get a electric recycling vehicle as a pilot to see what it will, how it'll cope with the hills. And the feedback we've had so far from other councils is that electric vehicles are great round towns, but once you get out onto the open road and you start going up and down the moors, it becomes they run out of charge quite quickly. So, but I mean, technology will improve, and we will continue to look. And we are also looking at the sort of wider fleet, the smaller cage vehicles, and some of the fleet that the localities use. So we will be bringing a plan as part of the proposals around the climate change in the council plan to electrify some of our fleet.
Yeah, I think that was the point I was going to make. We may need just to adjust the timeline for that particular item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheadle. Any other questions, please? No. Councillor Edmonds, would you like to move your recommendations, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I move the recommendations on page 235 of your agenda papers.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to second. Any debate, please? No. All those in favour?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. And then the final one for Councillor Edmonds and Mrs Hotchkiss, please. The quarter one and quarter two.
Report.
Well, let's do that in open and then we close.
Well, we can do the report, this part of the report,
Okay.
and move to part two if
needed.
required.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the report covers the period 1st of April to the 30th of September 2023, and the amount to be written off in respect of council tax, non-domestic rates and housing benefit is £130,460.21. In addition, there is a sundry debt detailed in Appendix B with a recommendation for write-off. The usual reminder for members that debts under 5,000 are written off by the Section 151 officer under delegated authority, and hub approval is required for individual debts over £5,000. So report recommendation number 1 asks the committee to note that the Section 151 officer has authorised the write-off of individual debts of £76,408 as detailed in paragraph 3 of the report. Details of individual debts over £5,000 are contained in Appendix A, and report recommendation 2 seeks approval from this committee to write off a total of £54,051.72 in respect of these debts. Following the Revenues and Benefits Service Review, a new debt recovery structure has been implemented with more focus on maximum both in-year and prior year income collection for council tax and business rates. As a result, it may be necessary to write off some historic debt, but only when all enforcement activities have been exhausted. This enables the team to concentrate on debt that is more likely to be recoverable. The tables set out in section 3 of the report detail write-offs for quarters 1 and 2 of this financial year, including a breakdown of write-offs by financial year. Members will have noted the Council's excellent collection rates achieved in 2022-23 for both council tax and non-domestic rates, placing the Council in the top quartile nationally. Improved collection rates were one of the key outcomes of the Revenues and Benefits Service Review, and I congratulate the Head of Revenues and Benefits, Mrs Hotchkiss, and her team for this excellent achievement. Turning to sundry debt, no debts under £5,000 have been written off during the period of the report. However, Appendix B, which is a restricted document, gives details of a sundry debt in excess of £5,000, and recommendation number 3 seeks Hub Committee approval to write off this irrecoverable debt. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edmonds. Does anybody... Councillor Renders.
Just a question, a bit of clarification, please, and just and also a thank you and a well done to the high percentage of collection that you have. They're really, really good. It's really excellent. My question is on, and it's not specific, we don't need to go into part 2, I don't think. It's just, if you look at in the council tax write-offs and the reasons for that are given for write-off, and the very first one, and it just jumped at me, and I just thought if there was a more of an explanation on that one. We've gone from 2 cases of people who cannot be traced to 74, and the amount that's jumped. Is there a specific trend for a reason? Did suddenly everybody leave or something?
No, but basically what it's due to is that we undertook a specific exercise to try and trace old debt where people had gone away. that's why there's been such a huge leap. What I would do is just kind of give members reassurance as well, though, that we periodically go through debt that we've written off. People quite often reappear. So in the event that they do reappear, we will write the debt back on and seek to recover it.
You just stole my thunder there. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, please? No.
Thank you, Chair. So I move the recommendation shown on page 245 of your agenda papers. Thank you.
Any debate, please? Sorry. No. Thank you, Mrs. Hotchkiss. You are a very tenacious lady. I think that is, yeah, it's just brilliant, your recovery rates, etc. And to be going through our books and giving them a complete overhaul is much appreciated, because it certainly won't be 74 increase again. So thank you very much for all the work you and your team do. It really is quite outstanding. So thank you. May I go to a vote then, please? All those in favour?
That is 8 and unanimous for those recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. So that's the end of the meeting, everyone. Thank you very much for your attendance and your contributions to the meeting. Thank you.